Hi. Thanks for being here.
Where are we going? Where are we going? Right here. I had to say hi to Kiki because she's a Bruin.
Oh, of course, I forgot. You have that connection, obviously. You guys might know Yahoo for sports. You might know Yahoo for mail. You might know Yahoo for news or for finance. But Yahoo's about to blow up in a very, very different way. Jim was named CEO a few years ago after Yahoo was bought by Apollo, a big private equity company, and it's really transformed the business. One of the first things you did as CEO is you acquired Wager, a betting company to bolster sports. You brought in Ryan Spoon, formerly ESPN, to bolster the offering. And now that you've sort of established a base ground, it's time to invest in women's sports. So walk us through what that investment looks like.
That's very true. So for those who don't know, I mean, Yahoo Sports is one of our major properties. It's in any given month either number 2 or number 3 after ESPN. It depends on NFL football.
Friendly rivalry.
Yeah, and over 100 million users a month just in sports alone. And I'd say, like a lot of people are experiencing, there is a moment in women's sports. It's been exploding over the past few years, and so we have absolutely been investing in it. Earlier this year, I'd say a couple of the moments that really stood out. One was March Madness, where our article consumption was up over 300%. The number of brackets filled out for our March Madness brackets was up 78%. So just a huge amount of interest in it. That then led to the same, straight through to the WNBA draft, where on another good example is our social accounts. This year had 24 million views. Last year it was 150,000.
Wow.
And so obviously the star power, Juju and Kiki are a part of that, but with Caitlin Clark and Cameron Brink, Angel Reese. I mean, there was so much star power behind this, which then has led to the new WNBA season having the same explosion of interest. So it's massive for us. I'll give you one more just fun stat. In June so far, 13 of the top 20 articles in all of Yahoo Sports were about the WNBA.
That's incredible.
Right up against things like the U.S. Open or the NBA Finals, NBA playoffs. So it's definitely having a moment.
So when we talk about women's sports, obviously we know basketball is so huge. You just spoke to some of those stats, but there's so many other sports that are starting to get elevated. We've had tennis athletes here. We've had volleyball athletes here. Yahoo is going to be investing in coverage of those other sports. How?
So it's funny you say that because at this point with these new sports taking off, you forget. I grew up watching Chrissy versus Martina, and there was a lot of interest in other sports. I would say a lot of this really the charge was led by women's soccer, and that started with the World Cup team that then led into professional soccer. So one investment for us is we're continuing that because I'd say it's probably the other main leader for women's sports right now. We just did a huge partnership with the number one soccer publication in Europe called One Football. We're their exclusive now provider in the United States, so we're creating a hub together that is really now the home for all soccer coverage, men and women's, for soccer. So as you now head into, well, right now it's for Euro on the men's side, but as you head into the Olympics, for example, and further into the season, so that's another big example. And then for the Olympics themselves, we actually just announced last week we've hired 5 former Olympians, all women, as our main hosts and on the coverage side. So Allison Felix is one, Carrie Walsh on the volleyball side, Missy Franklin in swimming. So a huge number of these events are being covered, but all by former Olympians, all gold medal winners, for Yahoo Sports.
That's incredible. So how do you train them to be reporters, or if you will, people who are actually covering this as opposed to being the athletes being covered?
Well, I'd say to me that trend is one of the most interesting stories on the media side of the past few years. I mean, these athletes have taken it directly to their fans, a lot, through social media. Bryson DeChambeau is a good example, who just won the U.S. Open. He has become a hugely well-liked player through his own YouTube channel, where he's directly broadcasting himself all the time. And I think all these Olympic athletes, have some form of the same thing. So I think they're very accustomed to the reporting side now.
You talked a little bit about the investment in fantasy. I spoke at the beginning about the investment in betting. How do you foresee those two products bolstering women's sports specifically?
So on the betting side, I think the tide rises on that with the interest in the sport itself. So there's an explosion in coverage on that side. For us, we're one of the top two fantasy platforms, so ESPN being the other. And I think historically the pioneer in the space, and we've been around the longest. We have a huge launch coming up later this summer with brand new versions of all of our products in sports and fantasy. So I'll leave that one teased and then leave the announcement for when we launch it. But Ryan Spoon, who joined last year, has been hard at work at the brand new versions of Yahoo Sports and Yahoo Fantasy. And so we had to do that overhaul first, and then women's version of fantasy, like particularly for next year's WNBA season, will be next on tap.
So wow, we just went through a lot of investment in women's sport. Let's take a quick zoom out for a second. Yahoo is this collection of major brands, like I said before, entertainment and mail and news and sports, all sorts of things. When you came in and you took over the company, I think this community at Cannes Lion didn't quite know what to make of the new Yahoo. How would you explain to marketers in the room what the value proposition, what the mission is of the new Yahoo?
Well, it really was I think one of the most underappreciated assets in the history of the internet, because even when I joined, it was still a top 10 overall property with hundreds of millions of users a month, number one or number two in some of the most important categories like Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo News, all of which are number one or two in their spaces. Last week, we had two big announcements. We just relaunched Yahoo Mail, which is still one of the top two with Gmail. And the new Yahoo News product, which we acquired a company called Artifact, which was created by the Instagram founders. So that product, which was our new Yahoo News app, just launched. In May this year, we were the number 2 overall property in total traffic in the U.S. So
wow. Who was number 1?
Google.
Google.
So I'd say, I think for a lot of marketers, we never left. I think, we have our beach club down there right next to everybody else, and it's popular. And there's just not very many places to get performance, at scale, right? Most of our users are logged in, so over 70% of our impressions are from logged in users. This is not a pitch. It's just interesting that Yahoo never really went away that way, and I think it was just underappreciated relative to what it was. But my new team over the past couple of years is awesome, super engaged and enthusiastic about innovating again. And so with these launches last week, you're starting to see that starting to come, and then Yahoo Sports will be later this summer.
So just thinking about the advertising piece of it, because obviously there's so many eyeballs, number 2 in traffic in May, coming to your sites. For a long time, Yahoo offered, the advertisers that are looking to place ads through demand, and the publishers who wanted to sell those ads through supply. You offered both of those folks the opportunity to work with Yahoo. But now you're just focusing on the demand side. Walk us through what that looks like.
Well, in our own way, we still do supply too as a direct O&O sale of Yahoo properties. So we're just not. So last year we shut down our SSP product and our native advertising product, but the thing we invested in was our DSP, where we are really just in year one of being able to invest solely in the DSP, and so that's I would call it one of our internal startups that way, and we're definitely the up and comer in that space. This quarter is the first quarter ever where we've been able to only invest in the DSP, because over the last year we've been shutting down some of the, we've had our attention distracted across a lot of that. This is also the first year where our revenue is solely dependent on the DSP on that side of things, because in our year over years, a year ago, we still had a lot of revenue that was coming from the old sale of having this unified stack of all that. So we are solely focused there on the DSP and growing it and competing in that space. Again, our unique differentiator is we have a huge network of our own, or first-party data, that gives you the ability to have true performance at scale. And I think that's why a lot of people are picking us as their partner on the DSP side. That said, we are also in the process of growing our direct sales team. So we now have sellers, premium sellers against Yahoo Sports and Yahoo Finance, for example, who sell those products directly as a publisher, right? But different from our DSP sale.
So if you're a marketer and you want to put more money behind women's sports, just can you quickly outline like what are the actual opportunities that you could do that with Yahoo?
Oh God, I mean, I would argue it'd be the same thing maybe you would say with ESPN and others that Yahoo Sports is one of the top two properties, and we're, as I said, huge amount of coverage of women's sports across video and other forms of publishing. It's also interesting on like if we're thinking about like the monetization of that space, that I think our publishing side is also interesting because we are the number one overall. Yahoo News is the number one overall news property. Sports is part of that, so we're actually able to point the funnel at the category from the top, right, from the Yahoo News and the Yahoo homepage perspective. And I think one of the things that's unique about Yahoo is that a lot of the discussion in Cannes this week is about how do publishers make money in the future, how does media make money beyond subscription. We have thousands of partners in our network. That's how we're not scraping the internet. We actually get all of our content from partners, and it's a rev share. It has been for years, a revenue share back with those partners. So it's actually a great way for them to make money and get traffic working with us directly, which I think is one of the healthiest examples in the media ecosystem.
I've seen many of my articles pop up on Yahoo and get shared from Yahoo as opposed to Axios.com. So I'm very much familiar with that. To that point on sort of the data syndication and all of that, obviously there's a huge conversation happening around AI, whether or not media companies should license their data to the big AI firms. Are you having those discussions?
A bit. I mean, we're a little bit different in that in our best form, we are an aggregator of other people's content and sending you traffic. So our job is to have people be interested in your content and get them there. It started back in the day with search, and now it's through news aggregation. So we do a lot of our own first-party content, especially in sports. I'd say one thing that's different about Yahoo is most of our really strong categories are not evergreen categories. They're actually real time. So if you think about news, weather, sports, finance, stock, the markets. So we're not really selling a catalog of information like a lot of these other properties are thinking about. And I think it's an interesting debate internally. Are these people going to? In a lot of cases, they've already been scraped, so that the horse is out of the barn and a lot of that, and they're probably thinking about other ways to monetize. But we do think about it. We have had some conversations, but it's not clear for us what the right pathway is there.
In terms of what's happening right now with the publishing landscape, it does feel a little bit doom and gloom sometimes, but then I come to the women's sports house and I'm like, wait a minute, there are green shoots here. Women's sports is absolutely a green shoot. What are other green shoots that you see that publishers should get excited about that they could build their businesses off of?
Well, look, everything now is multi-platform. And so it's not just what's happening on your website, it's the app, it's the YouTube channel, it's the TikTok channel, it's you really have to be everywhere, which then opens up, the audiences are much larger, obviously. Monetization really winds up being the only trick, right? Only certain properties can charge subscription. Only certain properties have their niche where they can charge a premium advertising rate because they own a category with endemic advertisers. But really you have to think about monetization across that spectrum. Now it has to go into commerce and lead generation. It's across all of it. And so I think that debate is going to continue because obviously it's not, you don't have the scarcity that you once had in the publishing space, but and there have to be other ways to monetize. Otherwise, we're not going to be coming to Cannes.
We're not going to be coming again, but I feel very optimistic about it, especially talking to you. I know your business is highly profitable. Just talking to Rita, who's going to be investing a lot of money in those NBA and WNBA rights. One of the big tensions at Cannes is how do we balance quality with the scale necessary to be able to, take advantage of some of these innovations? Yahoo's a scale play. There's no question about it. Do you ever worry or wonder about diluting the quality of all that syndicated content in favor of being the biggest?
No, I think we're lucky in that we're the biggest because of the quality. It's not, we make a point of not chasing traffic. of trying to actually help our users achieve their goals when they come to Yahoo, no matter how big or small. We're not judging. It could be a trip that they're trying to plan, or it could be just winning their fantasy league. Like anything in between, we're helping them do that. So if we stay useful and don't chase traffic that way, I mean, I think the internet went through 10 years of being drunk on traffic, and we're, I think, lucky in that our users tend to be logged in, very loyal and dedicated to Yahoo. We can lean on premium, and stay premium for their experience, and that certainly is my team's plan going forward. So we won't, we're not interested in just attention for attention's sake. It's got to be high quality both ways.
I've noticed that since you took over as CEO, you've done a ton of acquisitions, but none of them are entering new categories. It's all about bolstering the capabilities and the effectiveness of the categories that you are already in. Do you have any plans for acquisitions in the sports space that we should be looking out for as people who are interested in sports, particularly women's sports, et cetera?
It's possible. I'd say, look, and I've said this before with Axios and with you, we are actively looking at all times, both in two ways. One is the types of acquisitions that we've already done, which are products that we don't have and technologies that we don't have that can accelerate our roadmaps to get these things in the hands of people faster. So we acquired Artifact 2 months ago, and in 10 weeks turned that product around and had it relaunched. And that's so that was exactly why we bought it. The other would be entering new categories. Or theoretically, it could be a subcategory of sports, for example. But the threshold for that is going to be much, higher because it's going to be a much more expensive acquisition. And like I said, we're not just chasing traffic for the sake of it. It's got to be something that we really believe in for the long term, and the value has to be there. So we're always evaluating. We have not pulled the trigger on one of those yet, but it could happen.
We will keep an eye out. Jim, before you took on Yahoo, you were with Match Group, but before that, you were the longtime head of CBS Digital. So you've been following the biggest sports entities that there are. Speaking about women's sports specifically, for you as somebody who manages these media businesses, how have you seen the investment and the energy around women's sports evolve in the many years that you've been doing this?
Oh, wow. I mean, I'd say, exponentially larger, right? I started 2011 at CBS, streaming the Super Bowl, streaming March Madness. When I started, I don't think we had a women's March Madness bracket. I think we added that in the middle. And you could just see in this one decade, it's just light years ahead of where it was. And and again, I think now you talk about broadcast and streaming, you're starting to see that in the sheer amount of coverage of women's sports. And you can essentially see every game that's on at all times. And that's just something that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Totally. So we have time just for one fun thing. We like to end all of our newsletters at Axios with one fun thing. And
is it trivia? I'm good at trivia.
Oh, we can maybe pull out some trivia. But I was actually thinking a little bit more of Yahoo trivia. So when Yahoo was acquired by Apollo, you were also acquired alongside your sister company, that is AOL. And a lot of folks, myself included, when I think about AOL, I think about that's my mom's email address. My question for you is, I think people don't realize how sneaky good these businesses still are. How successful is AOL still for you? They turn a lot of profit still, right?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't put a public number on this, so I won't go there. But I will tell you, it's still very large. A huge amount of people have AOL still as their email. Those people tend to use the homepage and all the other features of it. And believe it or not, this is a new stat. It's grown double digits over the past year.
What?
Yeah.
How?
Better products and usage. I mean, this is what our team does. We're I think we're good at managing, in our lane, managing consumer internet products, and so by engaging that audience. So it's been an interesting one to manage.
And when you say it's grown double, is that like users or page views or revenue or profit? How is that doubled?
Yeah, I'm counting that in let's call it engagement metrics. So page views, articles, videos, all of that.
That is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
My mom's going to love that. All right, let's go over some of the things we learned today with Jim. Yahoo Sports has over 100 million viewers monthly. That's absolutely been just astronomical, really, to think about how big that is.
It's going to get bigger.
And it's going to get bigger, according to Jim. March Madness article consumption was up over 300%. That is amazing. Brackets are up over 78%. The women's WNBA readership went from, I think you said 150,000 to 24 million.
In social views.
Social
and by the way,
views.
those March Madness stats, to clarify, were for women's March Madness.
Women's March Madness.
Which again, it was such an amazing year of these stars. You had South Carolina going undefeated. I mean, it was a great tournament. But yes, that was that set was 24 million social views versus 150,000 a year ago for the WNBA draft.
That is incredible.
So the interest just skyrocketed.
And then June, 13 of the top 20 articles on Yahoo Sports were about the WNBA. That shows you that momentum. You guys have brought on a bunch of former female Olympians, so Allison Felix and Missy Franklin, to be your correspondents for the Olympics. We will look out for that coverage on Yahoo. There's a new fantasy launch coming up later this year, and TBD, we are excited to see what that means for women's sport.
It's awesome.
And we are having this conversation here at the Women's Sports House in Cannes because we feel as though women's sports is oftentimes overlooked and underappreciated. I actually think that's kind of the story right now of Yahoo. I mean, you just made the point that Yahoo is the #2 most trafficked brand in the internet, in the world, only #2 to Google. I think that's amazing, so, don't sleep on Yahoo. And then just sort of like the last thing, when we were talking about where you guys are innovating, the product and tech or entering new categories is what you're thinking about when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, but you guys are very selective because, you want to be effective. We talked about internet trends. You said the internet was being drunk on traffic for the last 10 years, and things are finally starting to shake out a little bit differently. And last but not least, tell your mom that AOL's huge still and that she is not in the minority. Jim Lanzone, CEO of Yahoo, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.